Before we get started, I just want to take a quick moment to reflect on yesterday. I know setting up these events and having it look effortless and have everything running on time like a Swiss watch and unbelievable presenters all day, right, makes it look easy, but I know a lot of attention and detail and effort go into that. So Rick, James, Michelle, Jody, Tina, Jonathan, quick round of applause for day one. And I feel really lucky because yesterday and the lineup that we had really set the table nicely for what I'm going to talk about here today, starting with Mike Dykstra and talking about what they're doing at Zeeland Lumber to engage and really energize the young people that are coming into their organization and to show them that there's a career path. And that was followed up by John Vaughn talking about what they're doing. He's going to say it. I might as well. Go Dogs. Right? That's even worse. That's enough. Let's keep moving here. I went to the University of Illinois. We don't have a football program, so there's that. John talked about what they're doing to become a great place to work and how some small changes to really listen to their employees and take small action has really made a big difference to them. And then we had Grant Levitt. I heard no less than 6 people outside after listening to Grant speak just talk about what a great speaker he was and how energizing he was and how, right, we can still do some unique things regardless of the market that we're in. And then obviously we had Russ and his panel with Sonny and Nick and Jeremy and Jimmy, and they really set the table nicely. So some of my slides will be condensed, but they did a fantastic job for just kind of laying out what's happening with the different generations and the fact that while we all want a common set of principles, we want to be motivated at work. We want to have purpose, right? For different generations, sometimes the intensity of these things means something else. So we're going to kind of dig into all those here. So we're going to get interactive here in a hurry. So I'm going to sell out the Stein group over here in the corner. I said, hey, what table should I call on? And they're like, the people in the back. The people in the back think they're always safe. I was like, you know what, Wendy? You're right, they do. Let's see, who's the good-looking guy, beard, striped shirt? Yeah, no, that's you. Yep, yeah. What's your name? Turner. You want to stand up for me? How you doing? Good, good, thank you, thank you. So Turner, you got a choice to make. You've been somewhat randomly selected, as far as you know. You can either come up here yourself to join me on stage, or you can select someone who's not wearing a Michigan shirt, that is unallowed on this stage, someone from your table to come up here and join me. What do you choose? Hey, look at you, Turner. Ew. It's impressive. 9 out of 10 immediately sell out their table mates. It's not even a choice. You did. How you doing, man?
Good.
Good. Where are you from?
Northeast Indiana.
Oh, all right.
Yep.
Very good. All right. So I want to imagine you're showing up. It's Friday morning.
Okay.
I'm just get the vibe from you. There's a confidence. There's a leadership quality here. You seem like an executive to me.
Not yet. Working on it.
That's good. Is your boss here?
No.
Okay, good. Let's pretend you have ambitions to take his job very, very quickly, all right? You show up to work, okay? It's Friday morning, and your executive says, hey, Turner, got something you need to address right now. Okay. You're like, oh, gosh, is it good or is it bad? She's like, no, it's good. So you go into your office, right? The smell of rich mahogany books surrounds you.
Yeah.
You throw your feet up on the desk, right? And you get this email, all right? I want you to read the email, so maybe you can hold that there, all right? Now, it's an email that came to you, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, Turner. I just wanted to drop a quick note of thanks to you and your team for helping me get my career on track. As you know, I've been struggling to establish my customer base over the last couple years as sales rep. My confidence was low, and I was uncertain if sales was the right spot for me. I was constantly putting out fires and never felt like I was getting ahead, or even in control of my time day to day. However, after completing the new sales training program, everything's starting to click. I am more confident, in control, and have seen consistent results from applying what I was taught. In the last 6 months, I've gone to second, I've gone second to last on our sales scoreboard and second place in overall. I plan to take over the top spot next month after I close this deal with Lennar. Thank you. I could never have accomplished this without your investment in me. Sam. P.S.
Oh, yeah, read the PS. That's
PS.
important, yeah.
P.S. Your good looks and fashion sense are only surpassed by your keen business acumen and leadership ability. Keep it up.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah, it's good. Thank you. Now, is this like a known thing that people can flatter you with your stylish sense and your keen business acumen? Is that a way to get to you?
Not really.
Not really. All right. So as an executive, how did that make you feel when you're reading that? How did that make you feel to find that someone was able to kind of develop their career in this way?
That's exactly what I want to hear from a salesman.
Okay. Got it. And how do you think Sam felt?
Empowered.
Empowered.
You know, if he went from last to first or second, you know, he can control his own career now.
You got it.
So.
All right. Here, you know what? Thanks for self-selecting yourself, buddy. Nice job.
Thank you.
Round of applause for a Turner here. All right. Now, the number one thing that we really need to protect, specifically with sales, right, is confidence. When you have salespeople that are not confident to go out there, face rejection, and face the uncertainty, we're in trouble. And when we talk about training to give confidence to salespeople, it's easy to let this issue become really complex and think we need big budgets. And I always come back to thinking about if we want to improve performance, think about the quote from Andy Grove, who's the founder and CEO of Intel in late 80s, early 90s. If there's a CEO Hall of Fame, Andy Grove is in it. He passed away a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. But he said there are only two ways to improve performance, just two: training and motivation. That's it. So regardless of how these conversations go and where they lead, it comes back to training and motivation. But these are not mutually exclusive. Because if we have training without motivation and we have training that's buried in our intranet and it takes 33 clicks to get there, it's like a maze, we're relying on willpower to guide us through to continue the learning process. And willpower as a primary strategy just doesn't work. It's a depletable resource and it's not a plan long term. So we need the motivation as well. So what we need a training framework. A framework that's going to speed on-the-job effectiveness. It's going to be low cost, easy to update. So as new things change, which they always do, we can add to our training library quickly. Also, that passes tribal knowledge from one generation to the next. We set the table really nicely yesterday. So how do we keep all this experience, wisdom, and expertise in-house? And lastly, how do we engage and motivate our team to continuously learn and improve? And truly have a learning organization that there is no finish line. So for the next 46 minutes, we're going to be going over a few things. We're going to deliver a framework to you to help you evaluate your own training and implement your own business. We're going to give you some examples of teams that are doing this right now. Some are within our industry, and some are not. We're going to give you a specific assessment that you can use with your team, and I'm going to challenge you with a small next step to begin this process. And lastly, because sales is such a critical issue for all organizations, and as I travel the country, the number one issue I hear from sales leaders and executives is, we're successful, things are good. Over the last decade, coming out of the downturn, things are really strong, but complacency is setting in. People aren't prospecting. We're not targeting our competitors' top customers to steal. We've worked hard for these good accounts, but we're just kind of sitting on them. So we're going to give you a specific tool that you can use to address that as well. Now, did anyone watch Hard Knocks this past season? One person? Good, okay. All right, that's a sign of what's happening there. So Hard Knocks, it's an HBO show, it's a documentary where some unlucky franchise that is not very good. By the way, any Raiders fans here? Some laughter? Okay, all right. Sorry about that, but did you watch Hard Knocks? Good, okay, don't. Just let it go, just let it go. So they send a bunch of cameras, they mic every meeting room, and week after week, they kind of show almost in real time what's happening. So John Gruden and Derek Carr, the quarterback, they were the focus. But I think this was my last season watching because there was the number one storyline was Antonio Brown, who maybe you know from this photo. Too early for this photo? All right, let's move on from that photo. Okay. If you're sitting up in the front row, just take a couple deep breaths there. Keep it together. Antonio Brown left the Pittsburgh Steelers, got traded there. Then he did some cryotherapy, where you go and sub 200 degree temperatures for a few minutes. And apparently he went in there in some tube socks. So his skin was falling off, he couldn't walk. You watch Hard Knocks, not a problem. Everything's cool here. Then he would only wear a helmet that was like 13 years old. The manufacturer was saying, you can't even wear this helmet, it's not safe, regardless of the concussion issue. He wouldn't do it. All these stories weren't discussed, but there was one thing in Hard Knocks that really resonated with me, and I want to share it with you.
When you're practicing against your own team in shorts. All right? We're going to practice in shorts again. Knock on wood if you're with me. All right? We got to stay hot. We got to keep putting wood on the fire, man. Knock on wood if you're with me, okay? Don't shove sand up the fleas in there. Knock on wood if you're with me. Do not cut your pants. Knock on wood if you're with me. Make sure we're clear on that. Are we, men? You guys like it? You guys love it or like it? It's good stuff. Are you with me, everybody? Knock on wood? Knock on wood if you're with me there, man.
That was about the only thing, and this happened numerous times every episode. But I thought this might be a way to kind of connect with you. It's early. I know some of you got a little crazy, got a little weird in Austin last night. That's cool. That's why you're here, right? So let's just try this. If I say, hey, knock on wood if you're with me, just give me a little tap here. So knock on wood if you're with me. It's not good. Rufus, I saw you literally roll your eyes while you're doing that. Is that necessary? Knock on wood if you're with me. Huh? All right. Okay. There we go. We're ready for that. Now, we saw charts like this yesterday, the demographic charts, right? We have a lot of baby boomers. They're leaving. 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day, right? Millennials is very large. They're coming in. We covered this territory very well in the last day. And the question we have is, how do we make sure these individuals on the left can be as successful and confident as these individuals on the right? And I call this the boomer brain drain. When I visit these companies, we have so many extremely talented workers that have been here a long time, and they're retiring next week, 1 year, 3 years down the line, and they're taking all their wisdom, their experience, their expertise with them right out the door. Not to mention the intelligence that they have accumulated over the years on these customers that they're going to pass off to someone else in the organization. So how do we make sure we're capturing that and we're not losing all that valuable assets to our business? On the other hand, we got this YouTube generation, right? Whether they're Gen Z, whether they're millennials, right? We have some late Gen Xers like myself, where my expectation is there's learning that's out there, it's available on demand, and when I want to learn something, I can go find it. And this generation is the most educated generation ever. The millennials are. They're going to be surpassed by Gen Z. Our expectation is there's learning on demand, and our expectation is that it's mobile first, right? We've got this. I want to learn on this, okay? And in the understatement of this presentation, they're very comfortable with technology. So every semester, I'm on the campuses doing a little teaching with Purdue University, University of Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. So I'm spending a lot of time around these students, and while I do understand some of the soft skills that they might be lacking a little bit, I'm continually impressed with their capabilities and their training up to this point. If I look back on my career and what I was like at 22, these individuals are far more prepared to hit the job site, to be in the yard and deliver value and contribute to your team. So as I was attending these conferences, I heard over and over all this negativity that we talked about yesterday around the millennials. And I found it really unhelpful, but I didn't believe it. I saw a different side. So we partnered with Purdue and the University of Denver. And what we wanted to do was a construction-specific study. And we wanted to ask each generation, the boomers, Gen Xers, and millennials, how do you feel about yourself and your generation compared to the other generation, and specifically the millennials? So it's a series of 10 questions. We talked about tech skills, we talked about work ethic, interpersonal communication skills, supervisor feedback, its effectiveness and its frequency, job hopping, would I work for a company with a strong purpose and take less money? So we got over 700 responses, and about a third of those were from our LBM community. And when we think about tech skills, we asked this question: how would you rate your ability? So I would rate my ability, my generation, and then also the millennials and theirs. And what we wanted to do was segment just the responses that said either I'm much stronger or stronger than other generations. So we start with the Gen X and Boomers. We group them together. So we asked Gen Xers and Boomers and say, how would you rate your own tech ability, your competence? And 83% said, yeah, I think we're stronger or much stronger than the other generations, including millennials. Okay. And then we said, well, hey, we also want you to evaluate, because you're evaluating the millennials as well, how do you evaluate the tech skills of the millennials? Well, 99%. They are also phenomenal. Okay? So then we asked the millennials. Millennials, how do you feel about your own tech competency? 88% said, hey, we're either much stronger or stronger than other generations. So now there's one bar remaining here. We asked millennials, how do you feel about Gen Xers and Boomers that you're going to be working with, or you are working with, and their tech skills? Do we think this is going to be a tall bar or a short bar? Sean, give me a number, quantify it. What percentage do you think that's going to be at? 18? Everyone wants to get involved. Great. All right. It's at 29%. Right? And we think about how technology is intertwined, how we communicate, how we train. It's every part of our business. Yet obviously there's some friction here because when Bill Lee says, yeah, I'm about 83% stronger than other generations, and I'm like, I think you're more like 29, Bill. How do we have this miscommunication in there? And what's the result for our business? I know you are very savvy, Bill. You're just sitting in the front. All right. So here we have this boomer brain drain. We have all these talented, experienced workers that are leaving. We have this next generation that's looking for learning, looking for training from people they know, like, and trust. Okay? And here, these two, I believe, are connected. I was talking to one executive, and he said, this turnover is absolutely killing us. When we can forecast out ahead and see all these talented workers who've been with us for 25, 35, 40 years, and they're leaving, we can sort of plan that. The struggle is when I need to put eyes in the back of my head because these talented individuals that we are recruiting, we're onboarding, we're training, and they're leaving after 3 years, that's what's killing us. He said we need eyes in the back of our heads. So this framework we're going to talk about here really is, I believe, what the future is going to have. And the future, it's already here. William Gibson had the line, the future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed. It's happening today, inside and outside of our industry, but it's not widely adopted. But hopefully we'll give you some ideas on how you can do so. So the future of LBM training, we believe, is training with rebar strength. And rebar is an acronym that stands for content, training content that is relevant, energizing, brief, accessible, and results-oriented. So we're going to break down each one of these in turn here. So for relevancy, need to go back to where we started from, and engagement on the job here. So if we had 3 different buckets, and we had engaged, unengaged, and actively disengaged, thinking of John Vaughn's analogy yesterday, we have 3 people on a boat, someone rowing forward, someone's rowing forward but slightly askew, and someone literally working backwards to thwart your efforts. When we think of this 53% number, based on the 2018 State of the American Workplace by Gallup, 53% overall, all industries, is that engaged, unengaged, or actively disengaged? Actively disengaged. You think 53% are, Jeff? It's very pessimistic. I hope not. All right? So about 34%, 1 in 3 is engaged. 53% is just not engaged. So not terrible. They're not thwarting your efforts, Jeff, but they're not really helpful. They're just along for the ride. They're cashing the paycheck. And then more than 1 in 10 are actively disengaged. They're trying to go directly against what you're trying to do. And one of the big questions that came up yesterday when we talked about the best place to work was my training and development needs are regularly discussed, ... and then acted upon to help me achieve my career goals. Well, oftentimes, we find we get training that looks like this. I want you to imagine if you're a newly hired director of HR for a top 30 firm, and you come in, and the first thing you do is, hey, I got to understand if I'm responsible for the training development, I need to go and evaluate what my team currently thinks of it. So you send out a survey to your team, and you get something that borders on a violent reaction to how you are training them. It's long, it's boring, it's PowerPoints with clicks like this. It doesn't resonate with them. So you call up what was described yesterday as a tall, gangly ginger, and you say, we got a budget, but you have to deduct $9,000. And the ginger says, why do you have to deduct $9,000? And he said, well, we signed a 3-year contract and pay $3,000 a year for this. I go, for this? And I say, why? He said, well, we signed a contract. We got this whole LMS in a box, some PowerPoints and some PDFs, but my people don't do it. The managers hate it because they have to run around playing police officer, castigating people if they're not doing the work, right? So there's a better way that's out there. So if we think of this YouTube generation, right, we need relevance. What am I seeing every day instead of traditional PowerPoint presentations with audio over the top? Looking for more authenticity instead of something that's super corporate and very slick, right? And we're looking for real people instead of actors. Right now, there's so many talented people that are working with you now that are going to retire soon that represent really good role models and have a ton of experience and value they can bring. So here we have the boomer brain drain and the YouTube generation, right? And these can both work together. One of the things that we did, we have a sales fundamentals workshop, a 2-day deal, and we use a GoPro. So this is a 360-degree GoPro. And what I can do, it's got a little lens on the front and it got a lens on the back, so it's catching everything. So this is on, so any dirty looks y'all give, I will catch all of it. We can set this directly in the table, right? And it's recording everything. And then what we're able to do afterwards, this is an actual builder who joined us. Day one, we prepare them, go over how to prospect, how to research, how to ask intelligent questions, how to engage in this first meeting. But then what we're able to do is, you can see that little hand there. Once we have all this footage, we can go grab it, and I can get any view that I want when I want. So if I want to, I can look at myself. What do I look like when I'm taking notes? Oh, I look like this, okay? I'm about to ask a question. I can grab it and I can swing right over. I can see what I look like when I'm asking a question. You know what I'm curious about? After I ask this question, what did the builder look like? Oh, here's what the builder says. What are these little micro expressions? And we found this to be a really compelling training tool when you can sit with someone who's been in the business and say, you see what happened here? Watch this. When you said this, watch his reaction. Look at his face before you even ask the question. But it's a tool like this that we can use to get really customized. And when we think of the YouTube generation, we're taking the you and we're putting them right in here as a coaching tool. So that's relevant. How can we make sure the content we have mirrors what they're seeing on the job every day? Energizing.
Adler.
Here.
Anderson. Anderson.
Here.
Bueller. 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 Bueller.
Ferris Bueller, one of the greatest movies of all time. Knock on wood if you're with me. There we go, I like it. All right, dude, we do not need to settle for boring. We don't have to, okay? Is anyone familiar with the company? Does training called Masterclass. Got a few of them, okay? Not to be confused with the LBM Sales Masterclass being held in Boston. Although, now that I think about it, I hope Rick and his team doesn't get a massive lawsuit from the real Masterclass. No lawsuit, knock on wood if you're with me. There you go, okay. Right. No, so Masterclass, they connect with experts throughout the world and make sure that they can teach their craft on demand, mobile-first platform. So if you're interested, I can hear about Howard Schultz, the founder and chairman of Starbucks, talk about leadership. If I want to learn how to shoot a basketball and dribble better, Steph Curry can help me do that, right? Aaron Franklin, right here in Austin. Pretty cool if you guys want to wake up at 3:30 in the morning and wait outside in a lawn chair for 9 hours, you can get some brisket at lunch, okay? He can teach you how to do that, right? We got Malcolm Gladwell, the author of Outliers and the guy who came up with the 10,000-hour rule. He can teach you how to write better. My uncle from another mother, Ron Howard, all right? He can teach you some directing if you want to get into that. My wife has been urging me to learn how to dance like Usher. So you can do all that. So an example, we get all this, and you can learn from the best in the world. Would anybody be interested in seeing any one of these here? Just yell it out. Howard Schultz. Sure. You'll get your time with a mic, Thea. Just take it easy. Why don't we'll go with Howard Schultz here.
One thing's for sure. It's very easy to lead when things are going great and you've got the wind at your back. It gets really hard when you've got headwinds, disappointments, and people are telling you you're going the wrong way. Ask yourself, do I have what it takes to lead the company, to lead these people? And my answer to you is, yes, you do.
All right, so you can get some leadership. I heard someone yell out Malcolm Gladwell. It's Malcolm Gladwell. Let's check out what he's doing.
So the job of the writer is not to supply the ideas, it is to be patient enough to find the ideas. David and Goliath is a concept we all know. An arrogant big dude who thinks he's fighting a sword fight, and David changed the rules. But then I stumbled across this paper that had been written by an Israeli endocrinologist who had suggested Goliath has this really rare medical condition which causes you to lose your eyesight. Why do giants lose? Because they can't see. They're so big and strong and powerful, they lose the ability to kind of properly appreciate the world around them. It's not just a story about David's courage and greatness. It's a story about Goliath's blindness.
David Goliath, right? For anyone, I'm Grant, thinking of you, Marcus Lumber, single location, 1,004, is that it? 1,100, okay. At that point, can you guys just kind of do daily updates on it where you just know if there's been a birth or, yeah? That's track it closely, good for you. This idea of David versus Goliath, right? There's a lot there. I heard someone talking about, wait, what's gonna happen as these acquisitions continue to happen? There's a reason David was successful, right? More nimble, more creative. So we think of that type of training, right? You can tell right away, yeah, I wanna learn from that guy, and I can learn from anywhere, and I can do it at a relatively low cost. Is anybody familiar with Dan Carlin's podcast called Hardcore History? Yeah? Again, it's the same three people. Good for you. Turner, nice. So this guy, he was in radio, he's just a history buff. He'll read like 15 books on a topic, disappear for 90 days, and then put out an episode. A few people had recommended it to me, and I'm like, okay, I'm in the car a lot, I'll check it out. So I tried out, and his recent episode, this was a couple years ago, was on World War I. Like, I know little to nothing about World War I. All right, so I check it out. So the first episode, first thing that caught my attention was the fact that it was 3 hours and 7 minutes. I'm like, I generally aim for podcasts that are like 39 minutes or less. 3 hours, I'm like, everyone's recommending it, I'll try it out. Listen to it, got hooked. About 60 days later, there's another episode. Number 2, Blueprint for Armageddon, about World War I. This one was 3 hours and 20 minutes long. I'm like, at a certain point, I'm just gonna max out on World War I history, but let's see what happens. Listen to the whole thing. Guess what? Yeah, there's another one. Third one was approaching 4 hours, 3 hours and 54 minutes, right? The fourth one came along about 90 days after that, also 4 hours. Fifth one came out, 4 hours and 29 minutes. He's now pushing 5 hours, it's great. Meanwhile, inadvertently, I don't even like history. I cannot stop listening, okay? So I'm listening to all this, and then there's a 6th episode, 4 hours and 16 minutes. For the CFOs in the crowd, I'll do the math for you. It's 22 hours. I literally accidentally listened to 22 hours of World War I history. I'm not joking. And for those of you who have done it, like, yeah, you get sucked in. I had somebody be like, I did that. I accidentally listened to 36 hours of Genghis Khan. I'm like, yeah, no, I listened to that one too. Oh, the Protestant Reformation? I vaguely remember touching on that for 5 minutes in high school. 26 hours, took it down, right? Why? Dan Carlin is a 1 in a million guy. He tells an unbelievable story and he makes history come alive. That's what he does. This was one of the responses, which is exactly what I said. I'm like, this is the future. I can pay 50 grand for a semester for my kids who are 12 now, or I can say, you need to learn about World War I? Buckle up, this is awesome. Why don't they teach history like this? Leveraging technology to find people that are world class and delivering it here for free, 100% free. Okay? So I would ask you to think about in your organizations, you guys know them right now, you see them every day. Who's your Dan Carlin of operations? Who's the guy that is energized? When he's talking, energy goes up. Who's the person in credit that can just articulate a story so well, people love learning more about it? These people exist in your organization. How do we make sure when they retire, they leave, we're not losing all that ability and skill? So that was energizing. When we go to brief, this one's fairly simple.
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life. Knock on wood if you're with me. That's good. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, I call this the Dean Wormer corollary from Animal House. It says, irrelevant, boring, and long is no way to go about training people. Okay? So these ideas of kind of small, bite-sized chunks. How can we do this? Sometimes it's 5 minutes, under 20 is generally acceptable. How can we think about this? Audio, video, face-to-face, how can we make them in smaller chunks? I want to set the table here a little bit. We have a product called Behind Your Back Bulletin. It's 52 weeks. Every Wednesday morning, a short video comes out, no less than 3 minutes, no more than 5 minutes. Try to keep it really tactical. I'm sure you'll be shocked to know I try to weave in some movie clips to try to make it fun. What you're going to see here, this is from about a 4-minute clip. This is 40 seconds related to how we can improve the confidence of salespeople to prospect more consistently and with confidence. I was impressed. Within 3 months, this individual, who I had never met, our companies had never worked together, had 100% of our business. Now, as I understood what he did, there was 3 main takeaways that caused me to call him back immediately. And those 3 things were referrals, research, and insights. If you're looking for a formula to improve the probability that someone will return your email or voicemail, this is it. Again, it's referrals, research, and insights. Here's how it works. All right. So the background, what I omitted from this was I was telling the story when I was working for Pulte Homes, working in area purchasing manager, and a guy out of Minnesota who's selling drywall, never knew. He called and left a voicemail that immediately differentiated himself, and I followed up with him. And I started trying to figure out what his methodology was to reverse engineer. And the first thing he did was named a referral, someone that I knew that he knew, so he roped in someone else. He proved that he'd visited a bunch of job sites that I was buying for in Minnesota. And he said, I have some very specific ideas to make sure you're not leaving 600 linear feet of corner bead and 12 extra sheets of 5/8 in every garage. And he sent along pictures. And I said, that's it. Referrals, research, and insight. It's not easy, but it's relatively simple. So I share that for you. So you guys can take this back. Referrals, research, and insight. So we're able to take this in a short amount of time. And if I can teach you something in 40 seconds, referrals, research, and insight, RRI, theoretically, come Monday, you can be like, oh yeah, saw this guy. Referrals, research, and insight. Are we doing this when we leave voicemails and emails, knowing that the people that are soliciting you for business are generally terrible at it? Okay? So how do we keep it brief? The smaller, the better, to make sure it's effective. So let's talk about accessible. What do we mean by accessible? Well, take a quick step back. We were talking about podcasts with Dan Carlin, audio content. We have a weekly podcast that is LBM specific on sales and leadership and training. And sometimes there's some little bit of confusion. So I want to make sure we know. So Netflix, I will assume everyone kind of familiar with Netflix at this point, is basically videos on the internet. We're in control, they're on demand. I control what I watch when I want to watch it, right? Well, same thing with podcasts. Podcast is really simply audio that is on the internet. You're in control. You choose what you listen to, and as a nice sidebar, paying nothing, I cut out about 90% of the commercials that I would listen to on terrestrial radio. And if I pay like $3 a month, I can eliminate all commercials. So I'm in control of what I learn and when I'm learning it. Internet. Right? This idea for sales professionals specifically about learning new skills while they're in the car is not new. Back in the 1960s, Earl Nightingale was the first person ever to sell more than 1 million records of spoken word audio. It was called The Strangest Secret, and fundamentally it was about we become what we think about every day. That kind of set the stage for Hillary Ziegler, AKA Zig Ziglar. Jim Sobek was telling a story where he would go and bring his, was it a little boombox? What was it?
It was a Radio Shack cassette player I carried in the gym bag with me when I traveled around.
Got it. Radio Shack cassette player. I'm picturing more of the Run DMC style thing on her shoulders. That's the wrong image.
Boomboxes came later.
They came later, okay? You stole Bill Lee's cassettes on Zig Ziglar, and when you drive around the country, you just throw them and listen, right? That set the stage for Harvey Mackay. At this point, we're almost getting to CDs at this point, so we can learn from Harvey, right? And now guys like Stephen Covey and actually all these people now, this is available on demand for us whenever we want as MP3s, right? And if we think about what we do, in sales specifically, how much time we spend in the car. And when you aggregate this from a person to a team, for a day, for a week, for a quarter, you get up into hundreds, and for some of your organizations, thousands of hours immediately. And we have companies in our space that are taking advantage of this. So Barron's Lumber, which is out in the Washington, D.C. area, for the past several years, 2.5 years, they put out a weekly podcast, private, just for their team. And I'll give you a little context as to why they do that.
So our podcast was really born as a solution to a problem we were experiencing several years ago when we launched a new strategic plan. And the problem we were dealing with was that the message was just changing as it went through the ranks of our employees. You know, when we first rolled it out, we did what you would typically do, and that is we had a State of the Union style address where we brought all of our employees into one location. Our CEO stood in front of everybody, and he rolled out the plan. It was very clear, and everybody heard the same message. But at some point, we had to transition that messaging over to our next layers of management, and that's where we started to see some erosion. And that was something that we felt like we just couldn't afford to have. So we did a little bit of brainstorming, and the CEO and myself came up with this concept of let's do an internal podcast. And that way, they're hearing directly from the horse's mouth what it is we're trying to achieve, what our mission's all about, how it's going to work into the future, and it's going to guide us for the next 5 years. And by doing it in a conversation format and telling stories, we found it to be very effective, and it got us quickly back on track.
I'm sure many of you in this room have thought about this to where we play the professional game of telephone. I tell you, you tell someone else, you tell someone else, and at the end we all laugh about how terribly distorted that message is. That's exactly what they are trying to avoid as well. So they've been doing it. It's privately. They send out a link each week, and the idea is for their team, during their daily commute, they can listen directly to the CEO, to Jim Davis, and that was Mike Solon, who's an executive there. They get together, they devote time to this, they say our messaging, do people know our purpose and our vision and know how we're progressing week to week. They know the score and the inning. That's really critical to us. Some other examples here, Builders First Source, they have a sales podcast, been downloaded several thousand times. For them, part of the challenge, and very similar to many of you, regardless of how many locations you have, is how do we make sure the best ideas that are over here end up to my team over here? And we're sharing what we know. So they had sales-focused podcasts. They found experts in certain areas, and we talked on certain aspects of selling. Brand Vaughn specifically is a series of Brand Vaughn Audio Insights. We did sales training, and afterwards we took the entire sales team and said, hey, we're looking for somewhere between 5 and 8 minutes. Maybe it's a story, maybe it's a new skill you've acquired. What's one way that you've been successful, something that you need to share with the rest of the team? We had younger guys who were 25, 26, sharing about how they're leveraging social media to attract attention and build relationships. And we had some of the older guys who were telling, hey, this is how you be persistent. here's a good mindset to have to stay positive when things aren't going your way. And I think if you talk to John after he slid in a Go Dogs once more, he would tell you, this isn't changing the direction. This isn't mind-blowing stuff. What it is, these are small reminders from a team that values each other, that they can reinforce and remind each other to stay focused on some of these things that can atrophy over time. The idea is, how do we build this repetition to remind and reinforce, leveraging all this time that we have in the car? We need to take advantage of that daily commute. Speaking of folks who've taken advantage of the daily commute, this is Phillip Rivers, longtime NFL quarterback for the San Diego Chargers. Then they moved to LA. Well, this is Phillip Rivers' family, and it's relevant here. He has 8 kids. So when they moved the franchise from San Diego to LA, I'm fairly certain his wife said, "You can go, we're staying." So he said, all right, found a solution. He went out, bought a $100,000 Escalade. He got a driver, and he turned his daily commute into daily training time. He pimped out the back for him and his backup quarterback, and from every practice, they have the game film from their digital editor, who's tracking the practices and the games, loaded into his car. So the entire way home, he's reviewing film with his backup quarterback. And what he said was, that maximizes my time, so I'm actually getting more film time than I was before, and when I get home, I'm spending more time with my family. We're turning this downtime into training time. So for any of those of you who have CapEx responsibilities, I think what you need to do is fairly obvious here. Buy a couple, Megan, just buy a couple dozen Escalades. Get every sales guy a driver. No, that's not the message. How do we take advantage of this time that we already have? Everybody's strapped for time, and yet increasingly, as we know some of the dangers of texting while driving, to some degree phone calls while driving, I tell salespeople, I can't do this. I can't do this. You know why? Because I'm making phone calls when I'm driving. I said, how do you make notes when you're driving? What? How do you make notes while you're driving? Well, right. Either you're not, or you're dangerously driving. One of those two things, right? So how do we think about leveraging this downtime to become better at our jobs? And for sales managers and executives who leave sales meetings, one of their complaints that's very common is, it's like pulling teeth. We get guys in there, and then they're tired, they don't want to contribute, and I just run in my mouth the whole time. Well, part of that, there's a lot of variables here, right? Humans are tricky. We had a lot of stuff going on. As leaders, though, sometimes it's our responsibility to put a little bit of distance between the thinking and the discussing. Say, we got a meeting coming up next week. I'm going to expect every one of you to contribute. I'm going to send you a link. I want you to listen to it. You can listen to it on your radio. Listen to this, so when you come to our meeting, you're prepared to discuss. Right? So that's accessible, and then obviously coming back, everything's got to be results-oriented. So a study was done in the construction industry by FMI, and the question was, how does your company track the return on the investment of employee training? Over 53%, no, actually, exactly 53%. 53% said we don't track it at all. In satisfaction surveys, we measure it, said about 31%. During employee turnover, exit interviews, that's always the best time to gauge the candor of someone who's leaving on how our training was. 26% track ROI through employee turnover and exit interviews, and then knowledge tests. Less than 10% perform consistent knowledge tests. Now, I want you to think about your own organization, measuring along these, where do you guys fall in line here? A real quick way, though, to double the return on your investment, well, we are focused internally on training our own team. A lot of these on why you're better, how you're different. What are the specific things you do on why you're worth more? Why people should pay more to go work with you. When those are done internally to make sure we're all singing from the same hymnal, we can easily double that by changing it, getting marketing involved, and using some of the exact same content to tell our customers and tell our prospects, to making sure they're aware of all the ways that you're different and better and worth more. So on your tables, we've got a couple of these out here. During that short video, we had 40 seconds where we were talking about the RRI, how to prospect better, leave a better voicemail, leave a better email, referrals, research, insight. This is just an example of where we can use something that is in video, and then we have something physical, right? Kind of this idea of blended learning. It's audio, it's video, it's physical. We can talk about it to really help people understand how we can use these different tools. So training with rebar strength, to run down them one more time, our training needs to be relevant, energizing, brief, accessible, and results-oriented. Now we think about this gap that we often have between what we know and what we do. This gap between exposure. I've been exposed to this new training. We've trained our people, but it has not been adopted. It hasn't been implemented. Oftentimes when we think about this, we think it's like riding a bike. You ride a bike, you're good. You go away for a year or two, you know how to ride a bike. Training, and specifically for sales training, is not like that. These skills atrophy over time. These are perishable skills. And a lot of times I'll be with folks, and occasionally I try to bring at least something new, a different perspective that they hadn't heard before, but a lot of times what I hear is, we just need to be reminded of what to do. We're busy, things are happening, we're busy both personally and professionally. We just kind of lose these skills. They degrade over time. So it's not like riding a bike. So how do we keep it fresh? How do we keep it relevant? So next steps for you. All right, also on your table, each one of you has a short card that kind of gives you a brief overview of what this presentation was about. There's a challenge that I'm going to encourage you to consider, which is be part of an upcoming training as a participant. Just join in. Even though you might know the content, maybe you help develop the curriculum, just go through it. And then evaluate, using the rebar framework, how effective it is. So attend the training as a participant, use the rebar, relevant, energizing, brief, accessible, and results-oriented, and ask your team. If you're interested, happy to give me your business card. I'd be happy to send you this form with your logo on it. You can just print a bunch of copies and hand them to your team to evaluate your own training. All right? Then I want you to think about your legacy project. This is what we often refer to these engagements where we're taking the best people in your organization who are going to retire soon and finding a way to capture all their experience, expertise, and wisdom so it retains in your organization. And also, this is something that you guys can do on your own, without anybody else, with a smartphone and very little editing. And oftentimes we find the talent to execute these things, they're already on your team as well. So to improve prospecting, you've got the sheet in there, okay? Now, this week, I know a world-class expert interrupter. He's my 8-year-old son, Redding. He joined me on the podcast this week. It's about 20 minutes long, and we run through how to not only interrupt busy people as sales professionals, it's something we have to do, but you can also do it by delivering value. We cover this RRI framework, referrals, research, insight. So now you can see, all right, we've got the video. I'd be happy to send you. You can share with your team. It's about 4 minutes long. We see it. You can listen to it on your car ride. It's audio. We can hear it. And now I have actual physical notepad, something that I can use to execute on the job. Don't let this idea and the complexity of sales training and training in general overwhelm you. Just remember that it comes back to Andy Grove, right? It's training and it's motivation. Right? And this boomer brain drain and this YouTube generation, these are two parts. While it's a challenge, it's also an opportunity to help each other. And I think back to this executive who said, this turnover is absolutely killing us, and we need eyes in the back of our head. There's a way that we can think about this. In 1973, Bengal tigers were becoming extinct. So in the Ganges Delta, they segmented this reserve, and there was over 500 Bengal tigers in this area. That's good. However, human beings needed to go in this area to fish, to collect honey, and to collect wood. This was bad. These are extremely ferocious animals. They would attack immediately. They would sneak out in the rivers and jump out, take down the boat, and kill all the people. So from 1973 to 1989, over 300 people were killed because of these tigers. They tried these mud mounds that had electrical in them. They tried these fences. They tried putting out dummies to attract them to these. None of this worked. The government invested over $1 million to try to figure out how to protect people from not getting killed by these tigers. And then a high school student was thinking about it and came up with this idea that these Bengal tigers only attack from behind. They found a manufacturer who could make these masks that you wear on the back of your head. They were less than $1. They distributed thousands of them. Over the next 5 years, there was 29 deaths, down from several hundred. Of those 29 deaths, how many were wearing the mask? 0. They were on the top of the head, or they took them off. Death. Wear them, 100% success rate. After millions of dollars from investment, the answer they were looking for was at a high school right down the road from a 15-year-old who came up with the idea. So I would encourage you guys to think about this, how to put eyes in the back of your head. Have any of you ever been murdered by a Bengal tiger? Don't laugh. This is very serious stuff. All right? Keep in mind that the size of the problem and challenge that you're facing does not dictate the size of the solution. This does not take a ton of money. Does it take some time and energy and attention? Absolutely. But it doesn't need a huge budget to execute it. So I want you guys to think about willpower, right? It doesn't work. It's a depletable resource. We need to do better than willpower alone, right? And as leaders, you gotta know you can't force people to change. What you can do is you can create an environment where the most logical decision is to make this change and to opt in and take care of it yourself. Thanks for your time.